ever get that feeling like everything's just speeding up? Like there's no time to just be, let alone connect with anything?
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're diving into today.
Okay.
It's the decline of rituals in modern life. And our guide is philosopher Byung-Chul Han and his book, The Disappearance of Rituals.
Han makes a fascinating point. He thinks this always-on feeling
Yeah.
is tied to how we've lost rituals, something essential.
So rituals aren't just those formal ceremonies,
Yeah.
right? Like what you see in movies, ancient chanting or something.
Exactly. We tend to think of rituals as, rigid and old-fashioned.
Yeah, yeah.
But really, at their core,
Mm.
they're all about transmitting values
Mm.
and creating that sense of belonging that I think we all crave.
Okay, but were rituals just for, like, ancient societies? I mean, where did they even fit into daily life?
Well, think of it this way.
Okay.
Imagine two people sharing a broken clay tablet.
Okay.
It's called a tessera hospitalis.
Yep.
Now, this simple object, it signified hospitality, recognition. It was like a physical symbol of connection, something that transcended words.
So a ritual object could really, like, cement a bond between people.
Exactly.
Like a lasting reminder
Exactly.
of a shared experience. Yeah.
And Han contrasts this with our world today. We're constantly connected online, but often feel deeply disconnected from each other.
It's like we're drowning in information, but starving for real connection.
Right.
Han calls this communication without community.
Yes.
Does social media actually make you feel more connected or just add to the noise? It's something to think about.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it ties into Han's concept of the compulsion to produce.
Okay.
Modern life pushes us to constantly strive for more.
Yeah.
More stuff, more experiences, more efficiency.
Yeah, that resonates. Like there's always pressure to upgrade your phone, your job, even your social life. It's just constant.
Yeah, and this affects how we view time and things. In a world obsessed with production, everything becomes disposable.
Yeah.
Han even uses smartphones as an example. He calls them non-things because they lack the permanence and individuality of objects from the past.
That's such an interesting way to put it. It's like our phones are designed to be replaced, so we never really form a lasting connection to them, always looking ahead to the next model,
Precisely. And this constant striving for the new leads to what Han calls serial perception.
Okay.
We're always jumping from one thing to the next, never fully focusing on anything.
Yeah.
Like, constantly refreshing your social media feed.
Totally.
Or always chasing the next sale.
It's like we're afraid to miss out, so we never actually savor what's right in front of us.
Yeah, and this stands in stark contrast to the focus and intensity of rituals.
Okay.
Han talks about the practice of apprendre par cœur, learning by heart. It wasn't just about memorization, but about cultivating deep attention and connection to knowledge.
There's a quote from Kierkegaard that comes to mind. Only the new tires. It is the old that nourishes in abundance.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah, I think that captures this idea perfectly.
Yeah. It brings us to another crucial point.
Okay.
The role of the body in rituals.
Okay.
They were deeply embodied experiences connecting us to our physical selves and the community.
Thinking about all this producing makes me wonder, how does our physical self even fit into this digital world? I mean, rituals were so physical, weren't they?
You're spot on.
Yeah.
Digital communication is often disembodied. We interact through screens, disconnecting from the physicality of our interactions.
It makes you think about how our bodies experience this digital world. The constant scrolling, the blue light, the posture.
It really does. And this brings us to Han's critique of the modern obsession with authenticity.
Wait, I'm not sure I understand. How can authenticity be a bad thing?
Well, it might seem counterintuitive. But Han argues that this relentless focus on the self can actually be harmful to community building. It becomes all about showcasing our individuality, our emotions, our vulnerabilities, a kind of pornographic bearing of the private self, as he puts it.
So instead of connecting us, this constant self-exposure can actually isolate us.
Exactly. And this is where Han's concept of rituals of closure comes in.
What does he mean by that?
Well, rituals, with their defined beginning and end, offered a sense of completion.
Okay.
They marked transitions and created pauses in a world that constantly demands more.
So they were like a way to step off the treadmill of everyday life and just be present.
Exactly. A perfect illustration is the story Han tells about a village gathering around an old pear tree.
Yeah, that image really stuck with me.
Yeah, the pear tree, it represented cyclical time, communal belonging, a sense of continuity that's often missing in our fast-paced world.
Hmm.
It provided a moment of closure, of collective reflection.
Which, if we're honest, is something a lot of us are craving, right? It's like we're always in this state of incompleteness, never quite reaching the finish line.
Yeah. This constant striving for more, for newer, for better, is what Han calls the profanation of life.
Okay.
The sacred spaces of ritual and rest
Hmm.
are being eroded by this relentless pressure to produce.
I think a lot of us can relate to that.
Yeah.
This pressure to constantly perform, to optimize every aspect of our lives, it can be exhausting.
Right.
And it definitely leaves little room for those moments of quiet contemplation or shared experience that rituals once provided.
Right. Han is particularly concerned about the effects of globalization on this trend. He sees a dangerous homogenization of culture happening,
Hmm.
where unique traditions and rituals are being replaced by a kind of global monoculture.
But haven't some global movements like environmentalism also brought people together? I mean, is it all bad?
That's a good point. Han's not saying that all global interaction is negative, but he does warn against a world where everyone starts to think and act the same.
Right.
He believes that the local, the unique, the particular, these are the spaces where we can rediscover the richness and meaning that rituals once provided.
Because without those distinct cultural markers, those unique traditions and rituals, it becomes harder to define who we are and what we stand for,
Right.
both individually
Yes.
and as communities.
Right. It's like losing a piece of our collective identity.
Mm.
And this loss contributes to the feeling of disorientation and unease that many people experience in the modern world.
I think that's a good place to pause for now. We've covered a lot of ground,
We have.
but there's still much to explore.
Indeed. Join us in part 2 as we delve deeper into Han's analysis, and we'll explore what this disappearance of rituals means for our understanding of identity in a globalized world.
Welcome back. So we've been talking about how this decline of rituals impacts our sense of time, belonging,
Right.
even our relationship with stuff.
Yeah.
But what about how we see ourselves,
Yeah,
our identity?
that's a key point. Han argues that as rituals fade, it actually shifts how we form our identities.
Okay, but how can losing rituals change how we see ourselves? It seems like a stretch.
Well, think about it. Rituals used to provide a clear framework, right, for understanding your place within a group.
Okay.
You knew your role, your responsibilities, what was expected of you.
So it was less about figuring out who you are as an individual and more about fitting into the larger community.
Exactly. But without that framework,
Yeah.
we're left to define ourselves in a world that's constantly bombarding us with messages about who we should be.
Right, like the pressure to be successful, to be authentic, to have the perfect Instagram feed.
Right.
It's overwhelming.
And this leads to what Han calls inclusive identity.
Inclusive identity. Doesn't that sound kind of like a contradiction? How can identity be inclusive?
It might seem that way, yeah. But Han draws on the example of ancient Greece to illustrate his point.
Okay, so how did the Greeks view identity?
Well, the Greeks, while certainly proud of their own culture,
Yeah.
also valued the contributions of foreigners.
Okay.
Their sense of identity wasn't based on exclusion. They recognize that diversity and exchange could actually enrich their society.
So they were open to outside influences, not trying to shut themselves off from the world.
Exactly. Han even points out how the Greeks incorporated the arrival of foreigners into their mythology. Think about Prometheus, who, according to Greek mythology, came from the Caucasus and brought fire to mankind.
That's interesting. So they were weaving these stories of outsiders into the fabric of their own culture.
Exactly. And this open, inclusive approach to identity stands in stark contrast to the more exclusionary forms of identity we see emerging today.
You mean like the rise of nationalism and fundamentalism, where the focus is on drawing sharp lines between us and them?
Precisely. And Han connects this to the dangers of globalization. He argues that globalization can lead to a homogenization of culture, where everything starts to look and feel the same.
Yeah.
We lose those unique traditions and rituals that help us define who we are and what we stand for.
Right. It's like everyone's wearing the same clothes, listening to the same music, watching the same shows. It's hard to stand out when everything's becoming so uniform.
And Han uses the term delocalization to describe this phenomenon.
Okay.
The digital world, with its instant communication and global reach, further accelerates this process.
Seems like we're all living in this giant, interconnected but ultimately placeless network.
Exactly. We lose our sense of rootedness, of belonging to a specific place and community.
Which brings us back to Han's point about the importance of the local. But how do we do that in a world that's constantly pushing us toward the global, the universal? It feels like a losing battle sometimes.
Well, Hans suggests that a re-enchantment of the world through ritual could be the answer.
Okay.
He believes that by reintroducing meaningful rituals into our lives, we can counter the effects of this delocalization and reclaim a sense of connection to ourselves, to others,
Yeah.
and to the world around us.
So it's not just about bringing back any old ritual.
Right.
It's about finding rituals that help us reconnect with what's truly meaningful in our lives.
Yes, and this re-enchantment doesn't have to be about, grand, elaborate ceremonies.
Right.
It can start with small, everyday rituals that bring intention and meaning to our daily lives.
Like what? Can you give me an example?
Think about the simple act of sharing a meal with loved ones.
Okay.
It could be a ritual when you approach it with intention.
Right.
Putting away your phones,
Yeah.
engaging in conversation, savoring the food and the company.
I see what you mean. It's about transforming those mundane activities into moments of connection and appreciation.
Exactly. Or think about taking a walk in nature.
Okay.
By paying attention to the sights, sounds, and smells around you,
Oh.
you can transform a simple walk into a mindful ritual that connects you to the natural world.
It's about shifting our focus from the constant pursuit of more to the appreciation of what we already have.
Right.
From the fleeting, ephemeral nature of the digital world to the grounding, embodied experience of the physical world.
Exactly. Han also highlights the importance of language in this process of re-enchantment.
What does he mean by that?
He contrasts the magical quality of language in ritualistic societies with the increasingly functional and informative nature of language in the digital age.
So are you saying we're losing, like, the poetry of language?
In a way, yes. Think
Yeah.
about the power of storytelling,
Yeah.
of myths, of poetry. These forms of language transport us beyond the realm of the everyday
Right.
and connect us to something larger than ourselves.
It's like we're stuck in this world of emails and text messages where language has become purely transactional.
Right. And Han argues that this loss of the poetic dimension of language is a loss of something essential to our humanity.
Yeah.
He uses the example of Japanese culture, particularly the emphasis on ritual and the aesthetic qualities of language to illustrate his point. He describes Japan as an empire of signs, where even everyday objects and interactions are imbued with symbolic meaning.
He even talks about the intricate way gifts are wrapped in Japan,
Yeah.
not simply as a practical matter, but as a ritual act that elevates the exchange beyond the purely material.
Exactly. It's about infusing everyday life with a sense of beauty, intentionality, and reverence.
And Han believes that this approach to life can help us rediscover a sense of wonder and enchantment in a world that often feels, disenchanted and sterile.
He sees rituals as a way to reclaim the sacred from the profane, to inject meaning and depth into a culture that is increasingly obsessed with speed, efficiency, and productivity.
But isn't there a danger in romanticizing the past? I mean, rituals also had their downsides.
Right.
They could be used to reinforce social hierarchies,
Yeah.
to exclude certain groups, to stifle individuality. Aren't we better off without them?
You raise a valid point. Han acknowledges the potential for rituals to be misused. However, he believes that their core function, to connect us to something larger than ourselves,
Yeah.
remains essential in a world that is increasingly fragmented and individualistic.
So it's not about blindly embracing all rituals,
Right.
but about recognizing their potential to create meaning and connection
Right.
while also being mindful of their potential downsides.
Exactly. It's about finding a balance between the individual and the collective, between freedom and belonging.
And Han believes that rituals can help us navigate this delicate balance.
He does.
They provide a framework for connection and meaning-making,
Yes.
while also allowing space for individual expression and growth.
That's right. It's about recognizing that we are both unique individuals and part of something larger than ourselves, and that this duality is essential for a fulfilling and meaningful life.
So if we're losing this sense of connection through the disappearance of rituals, what can we do to bring it back? Where do we even start?
That's a great question, and a perfect segue into the next part of our discussion, where we'll delve deeper into Han's ideas about re-ritualization,
Okay.
and the search for meaning in a data-driven world.
So we've talked about how the decline of rituals is like impacting everything,
Right.
from our sense of time to our very identities. But how does this connect to knowledge? I
Mm.
mean, how we learn and understand the world around us.
That's a fascinating aspect of Han's argument. He suggests that in ritualistic societies, knowledge was often transmitted through, myths, storytelling, and symbols.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just about, cold, hard facts,
Mm.
but about engaging the emotions and even the body in the process of learning.
So it's like a more holistic approach to understanding the world,
In
not just about information overload like we experience today.
Right, and this had a profound impact on how people experience time. In ritualistic societies, time was often cyclical,
Right.
marked by the recurring rhythms of nature and annual festivals. It wasn't a straight line to some unknown future,
Yeah.
but a journey through familiar cycles.
Like the story of the pear tree we talked about earlier, it symbolized that sense of continuity, of time moving in circles rather than always pushing forward.
Yes, that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
This cyclical understanding of time provided a sense of stability and meaning.
Hmm.
Life wasn't just about progress, but about recognizing the natural ebb and flow of things.
But now it feels like we're always racing towards the next thing, never really stopping to appreciate like the present moment.
Right, and this shift in our experience of time is closely tied to the rise of what Han calls um, dataism.
Dataism, what is that exactly?
Well, it's basically the growing dominance of data and algorithms in our lives. Han argues that, we're moving away from a world where knowledge was based on human understanding and interpretation towards a world where knowledge is increasingly generated and processed by machines.
So instead of trusting our own intuition and experience, we're letting algorithms tell us what to think, what to buy, even how to feel.
In a way, yes. Think about it. We rely on algorithms for everything these days, from navigating traffic to choosing a partner. And Han sees this as a problematic shift. He argues that dataism reduces the world to a series of quantifiable data points, stripping away the nuances and mysteries that make life meaningful.
It's like we're losing the ability to see the world in all its complexity, to appreciate its beauty and wonder. Everything becomes about efficiency and optimization.
Precisely. Han contrasts this, data-driven approach to knowledge with the more holistic, embodied ways of knowing that were characteristic of ritualistic societies.
Okay.
Back then, knowledge was embedded in the lived experience of the community, passed down through generations, and woven into the fabric of everyday life.
So we're not just losing rituals, we're losing a whole way of understanding and relating to the world.
Right.
And that's got to have consequences.
Absolutely. Han believes that the rise of dataism, coupled with the decline of rituals, is leading to a kind of disenchantment of the world.
Okay.
We're losing our sense of wonder, of mystery, of the sacred. Everything becomes predictable, controllable, quantifiable.
Which, ironically, leaves us feeling more anxious and less connected than ever before.
Exactly. And this disenchantment, Han argues, has profound implications for our psychological well-being. It contributes to the feelings of anxiety, alienation, and meaninglessness that are so prevalent in the modern world.
So what's the antidote? Is there a way to bring back a sense of enchantment, of meaning, of connection in a world that seems determined to erase those things?
Han suggests that a conscious effort to reintroduce rituals into our lives could be a powerful antidote to this disenchantment. It's about reclaiming those moments of pause, of reflection, of connection that rituals once provided.
But it can't be about simply like mimicking the rituals of the past, right? We need to find ways to create rituals that are relevant to our modern lives.
Exactly. It's about finding ways to reconnect with our bodies, with nature, with community, with those aspects of life that transcend the purely rational and material. And it doesn't have to be about elaborate ceremonies or rigid traditions.
Right.
It could be as simple as, establishing a daily routine that brings you joy, engaging in creative pursuits, or spending time in nature.
So if we're feeling lost in this sea of data and information, the answer might be to create our own little islands of meaning, our own personal rituals that help us reconnect with what's truly important.
Precisely. It's about bringing intentionality and awareness to our actions, infusing them with meaning and purpose. It's about creating space for wonder, for beauty, for connection, in a world that often feels designed to distract us from those things.
This has been an incredibly thought-provoking conversation. As we wrap up our deep dive into the disappearance of rituals, I want to leave you with this question.
Okay.
What small rituals could you bring back into your life to create more meaning and connection?
Perhaps a moment of quiet reflection each morning, a shared meal with loved ones without distractions, a walk in nature to reconnect with the rhythms of the earth. The possibilities are endless.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep diving deep.